Christmas from the Bank of England. Interest rates cut to their lowest for 53 years. Reality bites, the Obamas and their neighbours facing up to a change of lifestyle. Can the Brown bounce back survive the Glenrothes by-election? Stay with us for the live result. Take a look at this lot, the top 10 most wanted on the Costa del crime. Katy Perry hands out the gongs at the MTV Awards, but who will be named the ultimate legend? And in Sportsline at 10:45, Redknapp's revolution continues. A hat-trick for Bent as Spurs thrash Dynamo in the UEFA Cup.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News at 10 with Samantha Simmons.
Good evening, this is Sky News at 10. Interest rates have been cut to 3%, their lowest level since 1955. The 1.5% drop came as a surprise, even to the experts, and it should mean lower mortgage repayments, less pain from the credit cards, and an easier Christmas all round. But that depends on the banks passing on the good news to the rest of us. Well, in a moment, we'll cross to our business editor Michael Wilson at the Bank of England and our political correspondent Glenn O'Glaser in Downing Street. But first, here's Sky's business correspondent Joel Hills on what it'll mean for you.
Today's extraordinary interest rate cut is intended to kickstart the economy, and with the run-up to the festive season, it couldn't have come at a better time for the high street. With just 49 shopping days left until Christmas, this is a stocking filler for consumer and retailer alike. And since it's taxpayers bailing out the banks, the government wants to see them pass the rate cut on to its customers.
At this time, people are feeling pressed with their mortgages. Businesses also need every help they can get. Now, the government's plans to recapitalise banks have meant that the rate at which that banks can borrow money is coming down, so it's imperative they pass that on because that will benefit the wider economy too.
Lloyds TSB and the Bank of Ireland have already reacted and passed on the cuts to their customers. But Barclays, HSBC, RBS, the Abbey, Nationwide and Halifax say they're reviewing whether they'll make a cut too. If it happens, it will be good news for Ian O'Donnell, who's one of 4 million people with a tracker mortgage who immediately stands to benefit. The interest rate cut could also be good news for the 6 people he employs.
I have a mortgage on my own property, part of which has been borrowed against for funding the business at certain points, so I have a fairly large personal mortgage, so obviously a cut in interest rates will have an effect on that immediately. And then for the business, we obviously have an overdraft facility for the business, and that tracks the base rate, so again it will have an impact on that.
According to the Halifax, house prices fell by 2% last month, and they're down 15% on last year. This mortgage broker believes that the trend would change if his customers could get finance.
They're worried about house prices going down, so the lower house prices go, the more difficult it becomes to remortgage. So people then really do struggle when they're on the high standard variable rate. So this would definitely help them.
The car industry needs help too. Production is down and staff are being laid off. Forecourts need buyers to start buying.
If people don't feel that they can come into a car dealership and buy a car because they can't get credit or they're not confident, then that's what causes us to have to reduce our production, lay off workers. We have many component companies dependent on us, over 300 in the UK. So if we're taking production down, they have to do that as well, and they have to lay off workers also.
The Bank of England will hope they've done enough to tempt customers' hands back into their pockets, but analysts predict more cuts could follow in the months to come. Joel Hills, Sky News.
Well, Sky's business editor Michael Wilson is at the Bank of England for us this evening. Michael, it's a bold and unexpected move, but is it enough to kickstart the economy, do you think?
There's a very clear message from the Bank of England. Think about it. 1.5% doesn't sound a lot, but what they've effectively done is slice the base rate by a third. So it's a good start. The Bank of England's clear signal that they want to be ahead of the curve. In the past few months, they've been criticised for not acting quickly enough. It signals that they are now not worried about inflation. What they are worried about, particularly, is the coming recession. And make no mistake about that, the recession is going to be extremely fierce, no question about that, and that will probably shrink the economies of Europe, as the IMF said, for next year, for 2009. So it is a big step forward. There's also the possibility of more government spending being shown in the pre-budget report, which will tie in with that, and maybe the prospects of another interest rate cut not that much far in the future. You probably asked me why the stock market fell today. Well, that's because of fears of the recession. No good corporate news. The Obama bounce lasted about 2 or 3 days, but the stock market now very, very worried about where the economy is going. But this is a good start, an unexpected start, and a very bold move by the Bank of England.
OK, Michael, for now, thank you. Well, Sky's political correspondent Glenn O'Glas is outside number 11 Downing Street. Glenn, as taxpayers, we've already poured billions into the banks. And Alistair Darling says they've got to pass on this latest rate cut. But what can he do to actually make that happen?
Well, what he can't do, Samantha, is force them. The government has set up a holding company to liaise with those banks that have taken taxpayers' money to bail them out, to recapitalise them. But that's an arm's length operation, an arm's length relationship. Ministers can't simply tell the banks how to run their business. What they can do is bring pressure to bear, as Alistair Darling has already been doing in that interview with Sky News this afternoon, saying it's imperative that this interest rate cut is passed on to customers. Now, HSBC, one of the banks which didn't take government bailout money, has already made it clear that it can't make these cuts linear. In other words, it can't directly relate its interest rate cuts to the Bank of England cuts, because it says every loan is different, there are different risks involved and so on. But the government will make it absolutely clear, particularly to those banks that did take taxpayers' money, that they expect that interest rate cut to be passed on to customers, people with mortgages, and those small and medium-sized businesses that are the lifeblood of the economy. And of course people will say, look, when interest rates go up we feel the pain pretty quickly, don't we? But why not when interest rates go down?
OK, Glenn, for now, thank you. Well, on our website, you can get more on how that rate cut affects you and your finances. And you can read our Biz Team's blog on the subject. That's skynews.com/business. Now, with the euphoria of election victory fading, Barack Obama has started to form his new administration ahead of his inauguration in January. The president-elect has received top-secret CIA briefings, and it's been confirmed he'll visit the current president at the White House on Monday. Well, Sky's Ian Woods is in Washington with details on what President Obama's team might look like. And our US correspondent Michelle Clifford is in Obama's home city of Chicago, from where she sent this report.
Squeezing in a trip to the gym, Barack Obama looked relaxed despite a day of intense activity. With a team to pick, subjects to master and a move to sort, the pace is only set to pick up. Still, he got the offer of a helping hand from the outgoing inhabitant of the White House, President Bush, pledging to do what he can to help ease the path for President Obama.
So over the next 75 days, all of us must ensure that the next president and his team can hit the ground running. For more than a year now, departments and agencies throughout the federal government have been preparing for a smooth transition. We provided intelligence briefings to the president-elect, and the Department of Justice has approved security clearances for members of his transition team. Taken together, these measures represent an unprecedented effort to ensure that the executive branch is prepared to fulfill its responsibilities at all times.
But as the removal vans in Chicago are being packed, so too are suitcases here. George Bush is going to miss his 8-year hangout.
As we head into the final stretch, I ask you to remain focused on the goals ahead. I will be honored to stand with you at the finish line. May God bless you.
The Obamas and their neighbours are already getting a taste of things to come. Residents in their South Side neighbourhood are now having to navigate bollards, armed police, Secret Service posts and hordes of journalists. This is the reality of becoming a president.
When we moved here, we were able to walk right by his house, and now we're just diverted in so many different ways because it's just, you know, we have the future president living 2 blocks away, so it's pretty cool.
The threat to America's first black president has already led to an intense protective shield being put around him. But his own security isn't his only preoccupation now. Barack Obama will receive his first daily intelligence briefing today on national and international threats. The war on terror, the hunt for bin Laden, the situation in Iran and the nuclear threat. The transition process means Barack Obama will have to be privy to all that George Bush hears.
He's going to suddenly have all of the taps of the U.S. intelligence community turned on and flooding into him. All of the different intelligence agencies are going to want to impress the president with how good they are.
But the political transition is only part of this evolving story. The personal shifts are already underway. Michelle Obama taking calls from Laura Bush about life in the White House. Her daughters will be the youngest incumbents of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue since 9-year-old Amy Carter. He does have plans to bring some of his old life with him. Rumour has it he's planning to erect a basketball court at the White House. Michelle Clifford, Sky News, Chicago.
Well, Michelle followed the Obama campaign throughout the campaign and joins us now from the security cordon surrounding the president-elect's Chicago home. Well, Michelle, Barack Obama and his family are going to have to adapt pretty quickly to their changing circumstances, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, it all happened within hours. His house is just behind me. It's a stone's throw away. But if you look, you can see that the police cars parked there at the end of the road, and they are dotted all over the place. I mean, you just cannot get entry to those roads in your car unless you are a resident. And I suppose that's the most obvious way in which things are going to change. But Barack Obama woke up yesterday and woke up again today knowing that he has intense schedules each day. And it's going to be the same for the next 75 days, right up until Inauguration Day. At the moment, he's partly focused on selecting a cabinet, confirmed his chief of staff today, but has to pick all of those other key figures. Who's he going to be looking for? Certainly suggestions that he will go for a bipartisan arrangement. He has promised before to end the old ideological divisions and focus in on the best people for the job. So that's going to be interesting. We don't think he's going to make the key announcements anytime soon. He's going to hold his first press conference as president-elect here in Chicago tomorrow after an economic summit. But we're being told by the Obama camp no announcements on names for the key posts. But interesting that he's decided, and I guess no surprise, that the press conference and that meeting tomorrow is going to focus on the economy, because arguably that is what propelled him into the position he has now. It was McCain's Achilles heel. It worked to Barack Obama's advantage. And then after the weekend, it's going to be the big day. We understand he's going to have a quiet weekend in Chicago. I doubt it very much, but spend time with the girls. And on Monday, he and his wife, Michelle, are going to head to D.C. to have a look around their new property. George Bush and his wife, Laura, are going to show them around the White House.
OK, Michelle, for now, thank you. Well, Sky's Ian Woods is in Washington. Ian, as Michelle mentioned, no announcements on key appointments yet, but a few names already in the frame. And as she just mentioned there, Barack Obama already making plans to come to Washington next week.
Yeah, 2 appointments have been made, not cabinet appointments, but 2 very important ones. David Axelrod, who has been his campaign manager over the last 2 years, will continue being a senior advisor within the White House. But the really key appointment is that of the chief of staff for Rahm Emanuel, the gatekeeper to the president. Rahm Emanuel has got a pretty formidable reputation as a man you don't say no to, and that contrasts sharply with Obama's style of doing things, and perhaps, arguably, maybe just what you need when you've got someone who's elected on a wave of optimism. You also need a bit of an enforcer there to make things happen as well. He's having to give up a job as a congressman to do this job, so therefore you've got to think that he thinks that this job is going to be a particularly rewarding and satisfying and powerful one within the Obama White House. And as for the transition, yes, President-elect Obama will be coming to Washington on Monday for a meeting with George Bush in the Oval Office. His wife Michelle will be given a tour of the residence by Laura Bush. But you get the impression that George Bush is hoping that some of the Obama stardust rubs off on him. He's deeply unpopular, as we all know. He's also in the lame duck last stages of his presidency. And you get the impression that he wants to make the transition to President Obama as easy and as generous, if you like, as possible, because he remembers what it was like when he came into office 8 years ago, just after all the furore over the Florida situation in the election, when a lot of Clinton staffers damaged the office equipment by removing the W's from keyboards of computers just to sort of show their antipathy towards the new president. I don't think you'll see any of that this time in the transition.
OK, Ian, thank you. Well, President-elect Obama will be holding a live news conference tomorrow at 7:30 in the evening. You can catch that here on Sky News. In the past few minutes, polling stations in Glenrothes have closed for its crucial by-election. The Prime Minister, whose constituency sits just next door, is hoping the resurgence of approval for his handling of the economy won't be brought to a swift end. But the Scottish National Party believes their candidate is on course to spoil Labour's party. Sky's Neil Patterson reports.
This quiet corner of the Kingdom of Fife is as far removed from the glitz and glamour of the US elections as is possible. But there are plenty who feel, like Obama, that history might just be made.
We're not going anywhere, guys. We'll be fine.
Buoyed by his party's success in the Glasgow East by-election, Alex Salmond's SNP have been campaigning ferociously ever since. They hold the Scottish Parliament seat for this area and believe that, yet again, the momentum is with the Nationalists.
I think Alex Salmond, generally speaking, he's confident, he's charismatic, he's good in front of the cameras, he's good at speaking. Gordon Brown, I guess, has had a bit of a better spell in the last month or so with the credit crunch. He's held a good account of himself, but generally speaking, I think for the people of Glenrothes, they're maybe looking for the SNP now.
Just checking if anybody's got any eggs.
Yet Labour have been rather visible, pouring MPs and activists into the area, the party more hopeful thanks to the slowing economy. So much so Gordon Brown has felt comfortable showing his face, despite being the target of the SNP's wrath.
There is, though, a feeling that the SNP may have overplayed the man rather than the ball. After all, the PM's constituency is just a few miles from here, and the polls show that his handling of the economy really has improved his long-term prospects. There are two neighbouring Lib Dem constituencies, and if they put the squeeze on the SNP vote, Labour's future in Glenrothes might not be quite as on the rocks as previously thought.
The Glenrothes constituency is far from an economic hub like the city, yet the credit crunch will hit. Old industry and new development both at risk. The SNP claimed that across the constituency there has been a swing away from Labour, but there is a part of Glenrothes that will be forever red.
I always supported Labour, staunch Labour supporter, and I'll not change my mind today because I think Labour does a lot for us, and especially small businesses. So they'll still get my vote.
The interest rate cut may have come too late in the day to have had much effect, and privately the SNP are hopeful of victory. If Labour lose, it will not necessarily mean the end of the Brown resurgence. Too many have predicted a defeat here. But if they were to win, there'd be plenty of light on the Labour horizon. Neil Patterson, Sky News, Glenrothes.
Sky's chief political correspondent John Craig is in Glenrothes. So John, what could a loss of this seat mean for the Prime Minister if indeed that is what happens?
Well, it would mean that the Brown bounce of recent weeks has been punctured. Now, in the past few weeks, of course, Labour have been clawing back support, gradually making inroads into that big Conservative opinion poll lead. Well, the Tories are not going to win here. They were fourth last time. You can probably just see the counting has just begun behind me. The first ballot boxes have just arrived here. We're at the Fife Institute in Glenrothes. Predictions here from bookmakers and many of the political parties are for an SNP victory, perhaps by 1,000 or 1,500. The bookies have got the SNP ahead, and of course if they were to win it would confirm that Alex Salmond's Tartan army is well and truly on the march north of the border. Would also show that despite Mr Brown getting some plaudits for his handling of the economy, he remains deeply unpopular. It would cap a pretty dreadful year. Crewe and Nantwich lost to the Tories. The London mayoral election lost to the Tories. Labour fifth behind UKIP and the BNP in Henley. And then, of course, that disastrous defeat in Glasgow East at the end of July. If they lose again here and the SNP don't need as big a swing as they got in Glasgow East, then Mr Brown is back in trouble. All those people talking about a dash to the polls next spring can forget about that. Yesterday, Alex Salmond was asked, are you going to win here? He said, yes, we can, and yes, we will. Where have we heard that before?
Well, indeed, John, we will be finding out the result of that election, which John will bring us live here on Sky News, expected around 12:30, 1 a.m. We'll see you then, John. Now, fragile ceasefire in the Democratic Republic of Congo appears to be unravelling. The United Nations says rebels have clashed with the army and captured an army base in the east of the war-torn country. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has called for an immediate ceasefire. He'll fly to Kenya tomorrow to attend an African Union summit along with the Congolese and Rwandan presidents. The MOD has named the first Nepalese Gurkha to be killed fighting in Afghanistan as Yubraj Rai. The 28-year-old from the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Gurkha Rifles, died on Tuesday in the Musakala area of southern Afghanistan when his patrol came under attack. Paul Gascoigne has been given a 9-week breathing space to file his late tax returns and fend off bankruptcy. The fallen football hero hasn't filed any returns for the past 2 years. The taxman is petitioning on the basis of an estimated £200,000 liability. The MTV Europe Music Awards have returned to the UK tonight with a star-studded event in Liverpool. R&B star Beyoncé and Welsh wonder Duffy are just two of the performers taking to the stage at the Echo Arena. Sir Paul McCartney is also in his home city, where he'll receive the Ultimate Legend Award. I'll Take That returned to the awards for the first time since 1994 when they won Best Group. Tonight, the group spoke to Sky News on the red carpet.
Very excited about it, to be honest. We were just saying what our last memories were, and in 1994 it was in the hotel bar after the awards. Partying, we were with Prodigy, Naomi Campbell, Prodigy, and
you're dropping these names now.
Dancing on the tables, and it was good fun.
We were with Naomi. Excuse me. We were with Naomi Campbell, but she wasn't with us.
Yes, we were following them around all night.
There's Naomi Campbell.
Yeah, we were very giddy.
Does it sort of, I mean, we come to a lot of these, you come to a lot of these as well. I mean, are they still exciting for people who've kind of seen it all before?
Well, our first one, the first MTV Awards Europe was our first one, and our last one 14 or 15 years ago.
About 30 seconds?
Is it that long?
Yeah, 14 years ago.
So the novelty hasn't worn off for us either. This is only our second one, X amount of years later. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a pleasure to be here.
Take That, happy to be back. Now let's take a look at how the markets have fared after that interest rate cut today. The FTSE 100 didn't respond well, 258.3 points down, closing that's 5.7% down, and the Dow Jones also down 443.5 points. It fell sharply amid concern over worsening global economic outlook. The Nasdaq also down 72.9 points. This is Sky News at 10. Time now to give you a quick look at what's going to make news tomorrow. And the Daily Telegraph reports on the pressure on banks to pass on the Bank of England interest rate cut to its lenders. The Guardian says the government may reduce income tax as part of a global effort to boost the economy. The Financial Times reports on the FBI warning to Barack Obama and John McCain that their computers had been hacked into during the presidential contest. Well, that's just a few of tomorrow's front pages. Stay with us on Sky News for our full review of Friday's front pages. That's at 10:30. Check out our website too, skynews.com, the genetically modified pig organs that could soon be fit for human transplants. Also coming up on Sky News at 10, Costa criminals, Britain's most wanted, are named and shamed. Plus in sport, how Robinho is leading Manchester City's charge in Europe.
Been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
And modern greats don't just watch the movie, feel it. Sky Movies HD.
This is Sky News at 10. 10 of Britain's most wanted criminals believed to be hiding in Spain have been named and shamed by police. Crime Stoppers posted detailed descriptions and images of the fugitives on their website, and authorities say they are already getting a good response. Sky's crime correspondent Martin Brunt reports from Alicante.
These are some of Britain's most wanted criminals. Wanted for kidnap, drugs, sex offences, fraud and attempted murder. They're all thought to be living on Spain's Costa Blanca, hiding out among the vast expat community centred on Alicante. Now, the thousands of British residents here have been asked to join the hunt for the fugitives.
People in Spain who are living there, the expat community, need to be aware of these individuals living amongst them, using them as a shelter, because there's still many of them committing crime, they're still impacting on the United Kingdom, they're living on proceeds of crime from very dangerous and quite nasty elements of crime and offences that they committed in the UK.
The operation was launched in Alicante with officials from the Spanish Interior Ministry, and within minutes it was prompting calls with potentially vital information.
The good news is that already we're receiving calls in the UK about these 10 fugitives, and at least 2 pieces of information that have come in online are significant.
The wanted list includes company boss Dean Rice. He should be serving life for kidnapping an employee who he'd accused of stealing his money. During his trial last year, Rice's old firm in Kent was said to be a front for drug smuggling. Rice's victim was abducted by a gang and driven 60 miles towards Ashford, then down a remote country lane. The victim was taken to this deserted farmhouse, beaten, tied up and interrogated. Dean Rice jumped bail before he was sentenced. Clearly, he's not expecting to come back to his Kent home. Dean Rice and the other fugitives have already had European arrest warrants issued in their names. And if they are arrested, getting them back to Britain and into court will be little more than a formality. These days, extradition from Spain is a much simpler affair than it used to be. Donna McCafferty and her partner Anthony Kearney are wanted in Scotland for extortion and fraud. Londoner Andrew Snellgrove is accused of attempted murder, wounding and a firearms offence.
From a personal point of view, if they can be caught here, send them back to England and lock them up.
And can you describe Winston? Like, is he a white now, black?
Calls from those who spot a fugitive go through to the Crime Stoppers Bureau in Surrey. There is a dedicated free phone number to ring from Spain. The British ambassador here has described all these wanted criminals as dangerous and not to be approached. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Alicante.
Time to catch up on all the sporting action of the evening now. Chris is here. Evening, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, it has been a bit good night for the English clubs as well in the UEFA Cup. All three of them winning, and the Harry Redknapp revolution just goes on and on at Spurs. They claim their first European win tonight under their new boss. Darren Bent got a hat-trick as well. Reborn under Harry, and one for Tom Huddleston as they won 4-0 against Dinamo Zagreb. I'll show you all the goals in Sportsline. Man City also picked up a win, their third successive one in the UEFA Cup. They beat Steve McLaren's FC Twente. Robinho among their scorers in a 3-2 win. And Aston Villa completed the successful trio with a victory in the Czech Republic, Slavia Prague, thanks to a deflected goal from John Carew. All those goals coming up in Sportsline at 1:45. So Alex Ferguson's in hot water with the Football Association. The Manchester United boss has been charged with improper conduct following his behaviour towards referee Mike Dean at the end of Saturday's win against Hull. He has until a week on Tuesday to respond to that charge. New World Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton says the sports supremo Bernie Ecclestone is wrong to dismiss the racist taunting he received in Spain at the start of the season. Ecclestone reportedly called the monkey masks incident in Barcelona a joke and felt the incident had been blown out of all proportion, but Hamilton didn't think the incident should be considered as a joke. He's not happy with those comments. After letting their $20 million payday slip, England's cricketers now turn to improving their position of 5th in the World Test rankings. Kevin Peterson and his team have arrived in Mumbai to start their tour of India. They're currently 3rd in those rankings. England play 7 one-day internationals and just 2 tests. Sportsline 1:45, lots of goals from the UEFA Cup.
Great, we will see you then. Thanks very much, Chris. This is Sky News at skynews.com. Angry Amy, find out why Miss Winehouse has lashed out at the Paps. And coming up, we'll be taking an in-depth look at tomorrow's newspapers' front pages. This is Sky News at 10. Time now to take a look at some of the morning's newspapers. The Daily Telegraph reports on the pressure on banks to pass on the Bank of England interest rate cuts to its lenders. The Guardian says the government may reduce income tax as part of a global effort to boost the economy. The Independent reports that the rate cut follows an IMF warning that the UK would be the world's worst performing major economy next year. The FBI has warned Barack Obama and John McCain that their computers were hacked into during the presidential contest. That's according to the Financial Times. The president-elect is pictured on the way to the gym on the front of the Daily Mail. The paper also accuses banks of failing to pass on the interest rate cuts to customers. I'm joined now by the journalist Angela Levin to go through some of those stories in a little more detail. Very good evening to you. And we're starting with The Guardian and Banks' Great Rate Gamble, its headline there.
Yeah, so this is what's obviously been featured very heavily on Sky all day. And it's apparently it's the lowest level since 1954 when Churchill was Prime Minister, which really gives you quite a jolt. It's desperate to put money back into the economy. Retailers believe it's going to be the worst Christmas for 30 years, and this is hopefully going to put £1 billion into the pockets of shoppers. The point is, though, will they actually stop spending? They've been told off for spending, and will they now spend because they can borrow at a lower rate?
And will they have more money in their pockets if the interest rate cuts aren't passed on?
Yes, well, apparently the banks are already laying the foundations to say they still have to make a profit and they still have to give savers a high interest rate. So we don't know. There's just one, TSB, that said it will, and the others we have to wait and see.
OK, well, let's move on to the Daily Telegraph and its headline there, Obama as he prepares to tackle the financial crisis.
Yes, after the euphoria comes the reality, and it's quite a sort of sombre picture. He is wearing his gym cap, but otherwise he looks down and thinks perhaps of the enormity of what he's taken on. I mean, that's the first thing, and his advisors are quite worried because of the euphoria as to people will expect too much too soon. And his Robert Gibbs, his campaign spokesman, says it's important that everybody understands that this is not going to happen overnight. Suddenly there's not going to be so much money in everyone's pocket. Suddenly people aren't going to be able to find jobs and do well. We have to be patient.
Well, he's already said that change may not happen in the first year, perhaps not in the first few years, even perhaps not in the first term. So he's really kind of trying to rein back now, isn't he?
But we're all on a roll, though. It's been so euphoric and we're so feeling positive, and, you know, everything's changed, that it's difficult for him then to bring us back to reality.
Well, if nothing else, he has goodwill on his side from a lot of people, doesn't he?
I think that'll count for a lot, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Independent, back to the financial situation in this country. Banks ordered to pass on rate cut. Well, they've been ordered to do so.
Yes.
But do they have to listen?
No, they've said they won't necessarily listen. I'm also interested in the photograph here where we have the Barack Obama's new Chief of Staff. It's the one announcement he's made, Rahm Emanuel, who was the model for Josh Lyman in The West Wing, played by Bradley Whitford over here. So it's sort of life-repeating art, or at least repeating TV. In The West Wing, he is responsible for the smooth running of the White House, and now he's going to be doing that. He actually, though, I did find, looking him up, that he was taught ballet as a young boy. So,
so if nothing else, he'll have poise.
He's also called Rambo, so because he's quite intense and aggressive.
He does have some pretty good credentials, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He's a serious man. He was Clinton's chief advisor, very hard-working, and will no doubt give it his best shot.
Yeah, and Barack Obama has said that if ever there's a man who can get things done and get them done quickly, he's it.
Yeah.
Of course, he's been elected president to do just that. But anyway, the Daily Telegraph and
the internet generation makes bad jurors. I was absolutely fascinated by this. Lord Judge, who is the Lord Chief Justice, said he's very worried about young people on juries because they're used to reading and looking at the internet. They're not used to hearing. He's very concerned that they are looking things up and they're not just coming to the cases fresh. And in one case quite recently, a young juror looked up the accused on a BlackBerry and found out all sorts of information about him. And the guy had to be released because they couldn't proceed with the trial. But it's very interesting how a generational thing is, where they don't sit and hear someone talking to them. They're used to reading it. They spend so many hours at a computer. I just thought it was a very interesting story about the nature of change.
Well, it's perhaps surprising that it's come out almost so late. I mean, the internet's been around for a long time. Research on people and on potential criminals has been, people have had it at their fingertips for a long time. So it's surprising that no one's come out and said this sooner.
Yes, well, maybe they haven't noticed this. I mean, that could be happening, but perhaps they weren't aware of it. But now there is a whole generation, and maybe more, amongst the jurors. Maybe it was just one young person and not so obvious, but now it's more, and he does really consider.
But what can they do? What can they do about it?
Well, he thinks that perhaps they will have to somehow present the evidence in a slightly different way. I mean, this is just he's flagging it up so that people then investigate it and see what they can do.
And another story on the Daily Telegraph there, Putin set to reclaim the Russian presidency.
Yes, well, this is another interesting one. They believe that the Kremlin has put out information to say that the current Prime Minister will resign in the spring, and that Mr. Putin will come back as president and could be there for several years, until actually, I believe, until he's 72. And this will worry everybody because they knew that the Prime Minister would be a lame duck, but actually to have it written down and spilt out into the airwaves will be very difficult, I think.
Well, legally, is he allowed to do this? Is he just allowed to say, well, I'm coming back? And,
yes, if the Prime Minister resigns, then he will take over from him. But, of course, he might have his hand held behind his back and be forced to.
Well, of course, it won't be much of a surprise to the West to thought something might happen. But he's very popular in Russia, so perhaps it's something that the people there want and they won't complain about.
Well, it does seem a sort of step back to communism, doesn't it? And people not having the rights to do what they want, and there's been a lot of assassinations, and he's not very friendly with the West, and you know, he is very, very powerful. He threatened us with stopping our gas supplies at one point, and I think it's quite difficult to understand, you know, what will happen in the future if he does take over again.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how Barack Obama reacts to this.
Well, it'd be very interesting to see these two great powers, you know, very strong men, how they actually work together and what they do together, and whether they can find a modus vivendi.
OK, Angela, the last story for the moment, the Financial Times. FBI warned Obama and McCain teams about foreign cyber attack.
Yes, I don't quite like to say this follows on naturally from the story about Putin. Nonetheless, both Barack Obama and John McCain's campaign teams have found that their computer networks have been hacked into by a foreign organisation. The FBI and Secret Service warned them apparently of this in the summer, although Newsweek, the magazine has only just revealed it now, and they've said you've got a real problem. And the Bush administration had already ramped up cybersecurity, it says here, over the past year, as networks across the government increasingly came under cyber attack. Last year, the Chinese apparently hacked into the Pentagon, and we don't know really now who these new people are. But it's very worrying. So as well as the physical security that has to be kept up, you know, he's talking behind a very large screen, you also have to watch the cyber security. This is a whole new area that has to be really looked after.
OK, Angela, for now, thank you very much. Well, Angela will be back a little later for our full press preview at 11:30. Also joining me then will be the Labour MP Stephen Pound, so do stay with us for that. Well, Barack Obama's US election victory has inspired millions of young black people around the globe. His win has touched the lives of those who, until recently, had given little thought to politics. Now even British teenagers are feeling the Obama effect. Sky's Alistair Bunkle reports.
Historic, momentous, whatever the adjective attached to Barack Obama's victory, what is true is that his presidency will be one with global influence. No other nation could hold an election that captured international attention in the way this did.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
We played Obama's speech to a group of pupils at the Lambeth Academy in South London. Aged between 14 and 16, they admit to having scant interest in politics until now. I asked them for their reaction to his victory speech and whether Obama as an American was relevant to them.
It motivates young people, young black people, to actually go ahead and try to be something.
I think it'd be nice, like, to see that happen over here, like to see a black president or black prime minister over in this country, because we don't really have a lot of black representatives.
He shows that no matter what you want to do, if you put your mind to it and you work hard, you can become whatever you want to be.
A mile or so away, 90% of pupils at the St Francis Xavier School in Clapham are black. The headmaster tells us that the school has been buzzing since the election. The playground chatter now all about Barack Obama.
Let me know then now, by show of hands, those of you who feel that you personally have been very much moved by the appointment of Barack Obama as President of the United States. Who's very much in favour of that?
Politics is an A-level subject at Francis Xavier, and a popular one at that. But politics, we're told, is normally a subject confined to the classroom. Never has it captured the imagination like this.
In the long term, it's going to provide a lot of paths for young people, especially young people who are going to be born and coming soon. They're not going to know everything, to see the world where it was, and they're not going to see how hard it was. They're just going to see that it's possible, and they're not necessarily going to have the hunch on their back that it's not possible.
For me, I think it's the inspiration that it gives me, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of my friends as well to sort of take that step in life to go a bit further and forget about the so-called glass ceiling that's there for a lot of people, not only for blacks but also for women and other people.
It's surely a sign of Obama's global appeal that his victory is so celebrated and talked about in Britain's playgrounds. Many of these pupils will be old enough to vote at the next general election. They will do so, they say, with much, much more interest. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, South London.
Well, it seems even the stars want to get involved with the new president-elect. As you heard earlier, the MTV Awards are underway tonight. And a few minutes ago, Sky Showbiz correspondent Steve Hargrave caught up with the newly crowned ultimate legend, Sir Paul McCartney.
How's it feel, Paul, to have won tonight?
Superb!
Another reward.
Marvellous.
Where
You
are
know,
you
people
gonna
think
put
I have the Liverpool accent, but of course it was fantastic. Brilliant, man.
Good for your hometown as well to be
Yeah, love it, love it. Always love being here. Fantastic. Best place, centre of the universe, you know what I'm saying?
Excuse me, try and get through.
Happy Sir Paul McCartney there. This is Sky News at skynews.com. Governor's gaffe found out why Sarah Palin got confused about the geography of Africa. And coming up in Sportsline, my walking out at Twickenham will be extra special for Steve Borthwick this weekend.
Been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
Barbados, sponsors of Sportsline.
Again, 3 wins out of 3 tonight for the English clubs in the UEFA Cup, and the Harry Redknapp revolution goes on and on at Spurs. That's 3 wins and a draw so far since he took over. Win number 3 came tonight, and an easy one too. Their first in Europe under Harry. Darren Bent with a hat-trick this evening as they demolished Dinamo Zagreb 4-0. The first came on the half-hour mark. It was 2-0 at half-time, with Bent making the most of plenty of space to double the Tottenham advantage. The match was sealed with a lovely strike from Tom Huddleston. England under 21 man, 3-0. And Bent went on to complete his hat-trick with 20 minutes to go. Again, getting on the wrong side of the sleepy defence. 4-0, Spurs second in Group D after claiming their first win. And Manchester City and Mark Hughes beat Twente of Belgium 3-2 in Group A. Sean Wright-Phillips with a very early goal at Eastlands after 2 minutes, in fact. But some rather indifferent defending, allowing the Dutch to equalise through Elia. That was shortly after the opener. But then Robinho, who's proved to be an inspired signing, made it 2-1. And it was 3-1 through returning striker Benjani, the former Portsmouth man, back after injury with a little deflection, but 3-1 to City and game over pretty much. Steve McLaren's side did get a goal back through Violart, but 3-2, as City holding out for the points in the group against the former England manager. Aston Villa made it 2 wins out of 2 in their Group F, but only just. Winning goal had a touch of luck about it. Steve Sidwell's shot deflecting in off the knee of John Carew in the Czech Republic against Slavia Prague, but they've now won both of their group games. There are 5 teams in the group. They only play 4 games, so they're practically qualified now for the next round. Sir Alex Ferguson is in hot water with the Football Association tonight. The Manchester United boss has been charged with improper conduct, follows his behaviour towards referee Mike Dean at the end of Saturday's win with Hull City at Old Trafford. He has until a week on Tuesday to respond to that charge. New World Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton says that the Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone was wrong to dismiss the racist taunting he received in Spain at the start of the season. Ecclestone reportedly called the monkey masks incident in Barcelona nothing more than a joke, and he felt the incident had been blown out of all proportion. He added that the people in Spain were simply supporting Fernando Alonso and that he didn't think it had anything to do with racism. But Hamilton doesn't agree with that. He thought the whole episode should be considered not as a joke. After letting their $20 million payday slip, England's cricketers are now turning to improving their position of 5th in the world test rankings. They've arrived in India, in Mumbai, for the start of their tour of the cricket-mad country. They're currently 3rd in the test rankings. They also play 7 one-day internationals and just those 2 tests. And they begin with a warm-up match on Sunday in Mumbai. I'll bring you all the coverage of that tour as we progress They won't be facing Sachin Tendulkar, though, in their first matches with India because he's too tired, he says. He's asked to be rested for the 3 one-dayers. Once again, he was irrepressible today in the Test arena, in the final Test in Nagpur against Australia. Test century number 40 against Australia, made 109. India closing the day on an impressive 311 for 5, and they are ahead in that series, don't forget. Steve Borthwick says he can't wait to lead England's rugby team out as captain at Twickenham this weekend when they take on the Pacific Islanders. Borthwick's retained the captaincy for the upcoming autumn internationals after impressing Martin Johnson on the New Zealand summer tour.
It's hard to put into words exactly how you feel. To represent your country, it's a huge honour and privilege, and it's something that drives me on. You know, when you're in the hardest training session and you're really out on your feet and you're thinking the opportunity to play for your country, but to actually lead out your country, to captain the country is an amazing honour, especially given the guys that are in this team and how close this team has become over the couple of weeks we've had working together and the exceptional talent that's in the team. So it's a really exciting game. I think every one of us is really looking forward to it.
That's the way it looks so far tonight. All the UEFA Cup goals, 20 past. See you then.
Barbados, sponsors of Sportsline.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up in the next hour, as the Bank of England slashes the interest rate, will banks pass on the cuts to customers? Gaza gets some breathing space to file his tax returns and avoid bankruptcy. Plus, we'll be taking a detailed look at the morning newspapers in our press preview at 11:30.
This morning over Ho Chi Minh City will wake with severe marmalade, spreading from the west.
Hello, it's going to be a very changeable night in store for us. A lot of rain moving its way eastwards. First thing on Friday, we're going to see that sitting diagonally across England, but it's moving so quickly eastwards. Much brighter weather coming in from the Atlantic behind that. First time we've seen sunshine in quite a few days, and still very mild as well. Sunshine right up and towards Scotland, but a scattering of showers through the west, and they'll really get going across Ireland. We'll have one arm of heavy showers through northern parts into Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England, and then further showers through southern parts might clip Cornwall later in the day. Now for the weekend ahead, the brightness continues and the air from the Atlantic still flows. We're going to have heavy persistent rain in the west of Ireland, and this system with its strong winds shifts quite quickly northeastwards, and on Sunday things turn a little chillier. We're going to feel the effects of that wind right across Britain and Ireland. Again, the heaviest of the wet weather affecting Ireland and western fringes of Britain. By Monday, fewer showers about, but still that cold air. You can see for Scotland and Dublin, temperature 7-8 degrees Celsius, mild in the south.
Tonight on Sky News at 11, happy Christmas from the Bank of England. Interest rates cut to their lowest for 53 years. Reality bites, the Obamas and their neighbours facing up to a change of lifestyle. Can the Brown bounce back survive the Dunrothers by-election? Stay with us for the live results. Take a look at this lot, the top 10 most wanted on the Costa del Crime. MTV Europe crowns Sir Paul the ultimate legend on his home turf. And in sport, Redknapp's revolution continues. A hat-trick for Bent as Spurs thrash Dynamo in the UEFA Cup. Also this hour, we'll be reviewing the morning papers with the journalist Angela Levin and the Labour MP Stephen Pound. That's at 11:30.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News with Samantha Simmons.
Good evening, this is Sky News at 11. Interest rates have been cut to 3%, their lowest level since 1955. The 1.5% drop came as a surprise even to the experts, and it should mean lower mortgage repayments, less pain from the credit cards, and an easier Christmas all round. But that depends on the banks passing on the good news to the rest of us. Sky's business correspondent Joel Hills reports.
Today's extraordinary interest rate cut is intended to kickstart the economy, and with the run-up to the festive season, it couldn't have come at a better time for the high street. With just 49 shopping days left until Christmas, this is a stocking filler for consumer and retailer alike. And since it's taxpayers bailing out the banks, the government wants to see them pass the rate cut on to its customers.
At this time, people are feeling pressed with their mortgages. Businesses also need every help they can get. Now, the government's plans to recapitalise banks have meant that the rate at which the banks can borrow money, so it's